Opening. A life in 7 turns. A life is not a straight line. It bends, it breaks, it begins again. And in between the visible milestones, the degrees, the weddings, the children, the retirements, are the real moments, the quiet ones, the ones that no one claps for, the ones that shape us from within. No one teaches us how to live a life. We are handed time, not wisdom. We are told to succeed, not how to suffer well. We are told to grow, but not how to let go. And so we stumble through the innocence of youth, the fire of ambition, the trials of responsibility, and the slow, quiet fading of strength. But if we listen, truly listen, there is a voice beneath it all. Not loud, not urgent, but steady. It says, live wisely, not quickly, not perfectly, but wisely. The Stoics knew this. They lived not for applause, but for clarity. They asked not, how long will I live? But how well will I live while I'm here? Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire, and yet he wrote daily not about power, but about peace, about discipline, about dying well, and above all, about remembering that we are mortal, not to fear it, but to let it sharpen how we live. This is not a story of success. It is a story of becoming. Through 7 stages, 7 turns in the road, we will walk the path of a single life. Perhaps yours, perhaps someone you love, perhaps all of us in different ways, from the first breath to the last, from innocence to wisdom, from fire to stillness. This is not a journey of speed, but of depth. Take a breath and begin. Stage 1. Age 0 to 12. The roots of childhood. Before a human being learns to ask questions, they begin receiving answers. Before we know how to speak, how to think, how to choose, life has already begun writing on the soft surface of our soul. Not with words, but with glances, with laughter, with silence, with presence, or its absence. Childhood is a land so deep that adults often forget it exists, but the soul never forgets. It remembers, not in images, but in reactions. Not in stories, but in how we love, how we fear, how we shrink or open in response to the world. From the first embrace, the first hand held as we learn to walk, to the sharp voice or the distant gaze, everything becomes a brick in the hidden wall we build inside. Each compliment, each cold shoulder, each moment of anger or safety becomes a sound that echoes long after it has passed. Marcus Aurelius began his meditations not with lofty philosophy, but with gratitude. He gave thanks for the virtues passed to him by others: calmness from his grandfather, compassion from his mother, discipline and duty from his tutor. He did not create himself from nothing. He was formed, like all of us, and we too are shaped by beginnings we did not choose. For some, childhood is filled with warmth, presence, affection, and attention. And so, they grow to believe the world is a place that welcomes them. For others, love came with conditions. Words of affection were rare, and they learned early that approval must be earned, love might be withdrawn, and silence could mean danger. No one can go back and change any of this. But the Stoic offers a powerful alternative, not to rewrite the past, but to look at it directly without excuses, without resentment, without shame. We were once the child who had no say, but today we are the adult who carries that child within. And adults have the power to choose, to understand, to release, and to live differently. Perhaps you were forgotten in the moments you most needed to be held. Perhaps you were compared, criticized, or asked to be someone you weren't. That was not your fault. But what you carry from it now, that is in your hands. The Stoics do not say, forget your past. They say, do not let it rule you. They teach that no one can hurt your soul unless you allow it. And when we let the past continue to dictate how we love, trust, or act, we hand it that power. Childhood may be a place of beauty or of fog, but either way, it is only your origin. It is not your definition. There are moments in adulthood when we feel things that don't match the present. A harmless tone triggers shame. A delay in response feels like rejection. An imperfection sparks a storm of self-judgment. And we wonder, where did that come from? The answer is often older than memory. Our childhood speaks not in sentences, but in patterns, in the way we flinch when criticized, in the way we seek to prove our worth, in the way we wait to be chosen, even when we've already grown. The Stoics taught that the self must be examined, not to dwell, but to understand. We cannot master what we do not first observe. If a child grew up feeling they had to earn affection, that child may become an adult who confuses love with performance. If a child was made to feel too much, too loud, too sensitive, they may learn to shrink themselves, to become invisible in order to feel safe. These lessons live in the nervous system, in posture, in the way we enter rooms, in the tone we adopt when asking for help. But here is what the Stoics remind us. You are not the past repeated. You are the present awake. You are not the child reacting. You are the adult responding. To grow is not to deny the child you once were, but to meet them again and say, I see you now. You survived without the words, but now we have the words. Let me carry you forward differently. You cannot unlive what happened, but you can unlearn the belief that you are still stuck there. The first step is witnessing, not blaming your parents, not excusing what they did not know, just seeing the structure you inherited, like an old house, built long before you understood walls could lean and windows could crack. Then, gently, you begin the renovation. You stop calling silence strength. You stop chasing applause to feel real. You begin listening to your own voice, even when it trembles. Marcus Aurelius said, if someone does wrong, the harm is to themselves. Let it go. Return to your own work, your own nature, your own soul. And perhaps the first wrong done was not by others, but by life itself, handed down without instructions. Still, you are here. Still, you are breathing. Still, you are capable of rewriting the script, not the events, but the meaning. The Stoic does not ask, what happened to me? He asks, what will I do with what has happened? And that is where your childhood transforms, not into destiny, but into understanding. You are not late. You are not broken. You are the witness, the one who remembers not just to grieve, but to guide. And as you walk onward, the child in you does not disappear. They walk with you, but now, for the first time, they feel safe. Stage 2, age 13 to 18. The storm of self. There is a storm that does not come from the sky. It rises within. Between the ages of 13 and 18, the soul begins to shift. The child, once content to follow, begins to resist. Not because they are lost, because they are searching. Searching for the shape of their own voice, their own name, their own place in a world that now demands answers. This is the age of questions, not polite ones, restless ones. Why do I feel different? Why don't they understand me? Why does it hurt even when nothing is wrong? The Stoics never feared questions. They feared self-deception. At this age, honesty is rare, especially with the self. One moment you feel invincible, the next, invisible. One day, you want to be seen, the next, to disappear. Emotions swing wide like a door in the wind. Anger, wonder, shame, desire, everything is louder, everything matters. But no one teaches you how to hold it all. And so, you learn to wear masks. One for your friends, one for school, one for family. Each one a version of you. Not false, but incomplete. You hope one will fit, but none quite do. So you keep changing. Your clothes, your tone, your opinions. Not to lie, but to be accepted. You want to belong, not just socially, existentially. The Stoics remind us, belonging is not found in others. It is first found within. Marcus wrote, "It is not the things themselves that disturb us, but our judgment about them." In these years, judgment is still forming. It is borrowed, patched together from peers, media, culture. You learn to care about what others care about. Sometimes blindly, sometimes desperately. And yet, beneath the noise, something deeper stirs. You start to observe. You begin to think beyond what is given. You feel the distance between what you're told to be and what you might truly be. This is not rebellion. It is awakening. But it's clumsy. Sometimes it looks like defiance. Sometimes like withdrawal. Sometimes like chasing anything that offers a sense of identity, even if it doesn't fit. You reach for music that says what you can't, for friendships that feel like mirrors, for moments, small but real, that make you feel seen. But you are not yet stable. You are still becoming. And that is the hardest part. You are asked to make choices about your future, your values, even your love, while still trying to figure out who is choosing. The Stoics would not scold this chaos. They would say, "This is the fire that tempers the steel." You do not need to be certain. You only need to remain honest, even in confusion, especially in pain. Because that's when the voice within begins to form. Not the one that reacts, but the one that observes. That is the birth of the rational soul. The hardest solitude is not being alone. It's being surrounded and still feeling unseen. This is the age where that feeling comes quietly. At school, in crowds, even at home. You speak, you laugh, you move. But somewhere inside, a small voice asks, "Do they really know me? Do I?" And the ache isn't always sadness. Sometimes it's hunger, for recognition, for connection, for a place where your truth fits without explanation. But few people know how to meet you there. So you fold yourself. You shrink parts that feel too intense. You hide softness behind sarcasm. You show confidence while trembling inside. And the most dangerous thing happens. You become good at pretending. The Stoics called this the false self, the one built for approval, not integrity. They warned, if you trade your peace for acceptance, you lose both. And yet, who among us didn't try? You agree when you disagree. You follow where you want to question. You laugh with people who would not stand beside your truth, because the need to belong is louder than the need to be whole, until it isn't. There comes a moment, often quiet, sometimes painful, when the mask cracks. You disappoint someone. You're left behind. You realize bending didn't protect you. It only bent you out of shape. And now, you begin again. This time with less noise, fewer followers, more truth. You start to choose differently, not to impress, but to align. Not to win, but to live with your own reflection. That's where the Stoic path truly begins, not with rules, but with recognition. You recognize your own patterns, your own reactions, your own capacity for wisdom, even when the world misunderstands you. And slowly, You become your own mirror. Marcus Aurelius said, "The approval of others is a poor standard. Only your own soul can judge your peace." You may not know who you are yet, but you start learning who you are not. You are not every opinion you once adopted, not every role you were handed, not every fear you absorbed from others. You are what remains when the noise fades. A steady voice, a quiet compass, a soul beginning to stand on its own feet. Stage 3. Age 19 to 25. The age of defining decisions, from searching to choosing, from questions to consequences. This is the age when the world begins to hand you its silence, not out of neglect, but expectation. You are no longer asked who you are. You are expected to show it. Suddenly, every choice feels like a door. What to study, where to live, who to love, what to believe. And behind each door is a version of your life. This is not a test with right or wrong answers. It is something harder, a test without instructions, a life that must be written while it's being lived. The Stoics would not panic here. They would pause. They would say, "The choices are many, but the compass is one. Live with virtue." Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily, just that you do the right thing. The rest doesn't matter. But what is right when you are still forming? At this age, the soul is still soft, but now it bears responsibility. Your decisions are no longer theoretical. They have weight. A late night becomes fatigue. A missed deadline becomes a cost. A broken trust begins to reshape a relationship. You start to understand. Freedom is not light. It is heavy, and many people mistake it for chaos. Some run from the weight. They drift, from job to job, from city to city, from person to person. Always in motion, never in depth. Others cling to safety, a degree they don't love, a relationship that numbs them, a version of themselves that looks good on paper, but feels hollow in the quiet. But some choose to stop running or hiding. They begin to ask, not what makes me look successful, but what do I respect in myself? That's the turning point, when you begin to live not for validation, but for alignment. And you start to realize the truest form of ambition is not rising fast, it is rising right. The Stoics never promised an easy path. They offered clarity. They said, if you want peace, choose what you can control and release what you cannot. You cannot control who hires you. You cannot control who stays. You cannot control the economy or fate or timing. But you can control how you show up, how you act under pressure, how you speak when no one is listening. And in these quiet, unseen choices, you begin to become. You begin to learn that there is no perfect choice, only choices that teach. Some bring growth, some bring pain, most bring both. This is the age where failure stops being theoretical. It becomes real, personal, tangible, and it arrives not to punish, but to refine. The Stoics taught that adversity is not your enemy, it is your instructor. When things fall apart, they would say, "Good. Now we see what you're made of. You don't get to control the outcome, but you always control your posture, how you rise, how you repair, how you begin again. Quieter, but wiser. You might lose things in this stage. A relationship that felt like home, a dream you've outgrown, a version of yourself that no longer fits. Loss here is not the end. It is the opening. Because once something falls away, you finally see what was underneath. And what's underneath is not weakness. It is will. Not the will to dominate, but to endure, to build, to choose again. This is the age where many learn discipline, not through lectures, but through exhaustion. You grow tired of chasing things that leave you empty, tired of proving, tired of bending. And slowly, you begin to simplify. You choose fewer people, but more depth. Fewer goals, but more meaning. Less image, more presence. You learn that peace is not found in what you achieve. It's found in what you no longer need to chase. Marcus wrote, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." And so you begin to guard your thoughts. You stop feeding the ones that diminish you. You start cultivating the ones that hold you upright. And without realizing it, you begin to walk with a kind of quiet strength, the kind that doesn't seek attention, the kind that knows where it stands, even in uncertainty. That is the gift of this age, not clarity, but character. And character, the Stoics remind us, is not built when life is easy, but when life is real. Stage 4, age 26 to 35. The fire that shapes the core. You've chosen, you've fallen, you've stood back up. Now comes the fire, not to burn you, but to forge you. This is the age where the mirror sharpens, not because you suddenly see yourself clearly, but because life begins to reflect you back through relationships, routines, responsibilities. You begin to notice what repeats, the kinds of people you attract, the patterns that follow you across jobs, cities, years. You realize not everything that keeps happening is bad luck. Some of it is you, unconscious habits, avoided truths, stories you keep telling yourself to survive, but not to grow. The Stoics would call this the confrontation stage, where you meet not the world, but yourself, finally unmasked. And it is here, more than ever, that philosophy becomes a necessity, not as an idea, but as a discipline. At this age, you no longer have the luxury of blaming others. Your choices have formed roots. Some have borne fruit. Some have grown thorns. You carry the weight of your decisions, not as guilt, but as gravity. And with gravity comes depth. You might have a partner, or a child, or a career that now defines how your time is spent. The freedom once romanticized becomes structured. Your time is no longer fully yours. Your energy is pulled in many directions. And your dreams, the ones from your early 20s, have either matured or faded. You begin to ask quieter questions. Not, what can I become? But what must I sustain? Not, what do I want next? But what am I building day by day? This is the age of reality, where ideals meet the limits of energy, time, and emotional endurance. The Stoics do not flinch here. They say, "Good. Let the fire burn away what isn't essential." In these years, the soul is forged in repetition. You wake early even when you don't feel like it. You show up for people who may never say thank you. You remain calm when everything inside you wants to rage. And that's when you begin to glimpse real strength. Not loud, not perfect, but steady. This is not the fire of destruction. It is the fire of refinement. And only what's true can pass through it intact. There's a certain silence that settles in during these years. Not because life is quiet, but because your inner world begins to demand more honesty. You start to see through the noise, through superficial praise, through temporary excitement, through goals that once looked golden, but now feel hollow. You begin to crave something different. Solidity. Not applause, not escape, but alignment. The Stoics called this living according to nature, not the outer world's nature, but your own deepest essence. And to live that way, you must let some things fall away. You may lose friendships, not from anger, but from distance in values. You may walk away from opportunities, not because they're bad, but because they're not aligned. You may outgrow your own dreams, not with regret, but with clarity. This is the age where shedding becomes necessary, and with shedding comes grief. You begin to understand, not all pain is punishment. Some pain is pruning. The philosopher doesn't seek pain, but he doesn't fear it either. He knows. When life takes something away, it asks, will you reach for distraction, or will you reach deeper into yourself? This is where solitude enters. Not loneliness, but solitude. The kind where you sit with your doubts. The kind where you question your pace. The kind where your achievements don't echo the way they used to. And in that stillness, you begin to listen again. To your body, to your energy, to your truth. You stop living to prove. You start living to protect your peace, your presence, your purpose. The Stoics believed in action, but not frantic movement. They believed in right action, deliberate, consistent, grounded in principle. You begin to choose less often, but more wisely. You begin to speak less, but with more weight. You no longer chase what glitters. You build what lasts. And most of all, you begin to accept the most Stoic truth of all, that life is not here to reward you. It is here to shape you. And if you let it, even the fire will become your ally. Stage 5, age 36 to 45. Surrender and substance. The fire has shaped you. Now comes the lesson harder than effort: acceptance. This is not the age of arrival. It is the age of realization. You may have built something, a family, a career, a name. You may have failed, started over, rebuilt. But now, the question shifts again. Not, what can I still achieve? But what is truly worth holding? The Stoics always spoke of essence. Not what you own, not what others see, but what remains when the titles fall away. And in this age, things begin to fall away. Some dreams fade, not from failure, but from evolution. Some relationships shift, not from betrayal, but from life's natural distance. Some parts of you soften, not out of weakness, but out of wisdom. You begin to understand, not everything needs fixing. Not every tension requires action. Not every silence is a problem. This is the age where peace becomes more valuable than progress. You've chased, you've proven, you've learned. And now, stillness feels less like stagnation and more like strength. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." And here, that strength is tested in subtler ways, in how you handle uncertainty, in how you let go without bitterness, in how you remain kind, even when life is not. The Stoics never promised a life without loss. They promised that loss could be endured with grace. And in these years, grace becomes your compass. You no longer argue with time. You no longer chase every possibility. You begin to trust that some doors close for your protection. This is not resignation. This is clarity. It is the quiet knowledge that your energy is sacred, and not everything deserves it. You begin to recognize the difference between effort and control. You used to believe that working harder could fix almost anything. Now, you understand. Some things are not meant to be fixed. Some things are meant to be released. This is the age where you stop gripping so tightly. You let people go without resentment. You let go of being right all the time. You stop trying to change what does not want to change. And in doing so, something else rises. Substance. Not the kind others applaud. The kind that holds you steady on quiet days. The kind that shows up in how you speak to your children, how you treat a stranger, how you respond when no one is watching. You no longer seek to be impressive. You seek to be true. This is the essence of Stoic living, not to shine outwardly, but to be aligned inwardly. You begin to value consistency over charisma, stillness over drama, meaning over momentum. And strangely, you begin to feel more alive, because your energy is no longer scattered, your mind no longer consumed by proving or defending. Your days, though full, begin to feel spacious, because you are no longer resisting reality. Marcus Aurelius once asked himself, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it." And now, for the first time, you start to test this. You no longer react as quickly. You pause. You respond with less ego. You begin to see that the storm outside does not have to shake the fortress within. You have begun to build that fortress, brick by brick in silence over years. And now you begin to trust it. Not perfectly, but deeply. You're not invulnerable. You're not always wise. But you're grounded. You are no longer driven by what you fear. You are guided by what you value. And that, the Stoics would say, is true freedom. Stage 6, age 46 to 60, the wisdom of impermanence. You've stopped chasing the world. Now you begin preparing to release it. This is the age where the mirror softens, not because the lines on your face have disappeared, but because you no longer fear them. They are not flaws. They are records of tears held in, of laughter given freely, of years survived with quiet strength. In these years, life becomes less about adding, more about subtracting. You simplify, not out of fatigue, but out of wisdom. You know now, not everything must be said. Not every invitation must be accepted. Not every thought must be shared. The Stoics would call this temperance, the art of restraint, not as suppression, but as serenity. And serenity becomes a new kind of wealth. You've seen enough to know that success without peace is poverty, that titles fade, that admiration wavers, that even health, even memory is not guaranteed. But this does not make you bitter. It makes you clear. You begin to notice small things again. The way sunlight moves through a room, the weight of a sincere hug, the sound of silence in a house that once was noisy. And with each passing year, something inside you bows, not in defeat, but in respect, to time, to change, to the nature of things. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Soon you will have forgotten the world, and soon the world will have forgotten you." But he did not say this in sorrow. He said it in freedom. Because when you accept impermanence, you stop grasping. You begin to hold everything gently. You love your children knowing they will leave. You care for your body knowing it will change. You honor your time knowing it will run out. And so you stop wasting it. You say no more easily. You forgive more quickly. You let go more kindly. This is not resignation. It is reverence. You are no longer building an identity. You are tending to a soul. You begin to understand that legacy is not what you leave behind. It is what you live right now, the way you listen, the way you love, the way you show up without needing credit. In youth, you chased meaning. In middle life, you built foundations. Now, meaning begins to rise not from what you do, but from how deeply you're present in what you're already doing. You no longer need to be heard in every room. You choose to be fully here, in this moment, in this conversation, in this ordinary day that won't come again. This is the Stoic essence of impermanence, not to mourn change, but to live more awake because of it. You know the seasons now. Friendships evolve, children grow, parents age, and sometimes you begin to feel like the one standing at the edge, not the center. But this, too, is its own grace, to become a witness, to offer wisdom not by teaching, but by being, to give more than you demand, to be content without applause. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, don't hanker after what you don't have. Instead, fix your attentions on the finest and best that you have, and imagine how much you'd long for these if they weren't in your possession. This is what gratitude becomes in these years. Not a practice, but a posture. You stop longing for what might have been. You start honoring what is still here. A conversation over tea, the strength to climb stairs, the patience to listen without rushing to answer. And perhaps most of all, you begin to prepare, not in fear, but in wisdom, to let go, to bless what you cannot control, to step back so others may step forward, to surrender with dignity, not despair. This is not the end. It is the opening to the final, most luminous chapter. Stage 7. Age 61 and beyond. The quiet light. When nothing needs proving and nothing needs holding, only then does peace become its own presence. You no longer ask the world for permission to be at rest. You have earned your quiet, not through retirement, but through realization that what matters most has always been simple. The warmth of sunlight on your face, the voice of someone you love, the stillness in a morning with nowhere to rush to. In this age, ambition gives way to attention. You are no longer pulled by the future. You are no longer shadowed by the past. You are finally here. Not by accident, but by grace. The Stoics never feared death. They feared wasting life. And now, you see how little was ever worth the worry, the regrets, the overthinking, the days spent chasing what was never meant to stay. You do not carry shame for your past missteps. You carry reverence for the fact that you endured them and still arrived with your heart intact. Marcus Aurelius, in his final reflections, did not cling to the empire he ruled. He clung only to clarity. It is not death that a man should fear, but never beginning to live. And now you understand. Living is not found in big moments. It is found in being truly awake to small ones. You stop giving advice no one asked for. You stop correcting what does not need to be fixed. You start offering presence instead of opinion. The people around you begin to feel something different. Not your authority, but your calm. You have become, slowly, quietly, a lighthouse. Not because you shine the brightest, but because you stand still while others find their way. This is not weakness. It is the final form of strength. You no longer fear being forgotten. Because you have seen, nothing truly meaningful is ever lost. It becomes part of others. A gesture, a moment of kindness, a sentence spoken decades ago that still echoes in someone's heart. You stop asking, what will they remember me for? You start asking, did I live gently enough for them to remember peace? This is the final wisdom of the Stoics, that death is not a thief. It is a mirror. It reflects what we chose to build with our time, what we chose to love, what we chose to release. And if you have loved well, if you have forgiven when it was hardest, if you have walked through your years without letting bitterness take root, then the end isn't an end. It is a soft return to silence, to stillness, to something deeper than memory. In your final years, the body may slow, but the soul, strangely, feels more awake, You notice things no one else sees. The way a child breathes while sleeping. The way wind moves through trees. The way time hums when you are no longer racing it. And if someone were to ask you, what is the secret to a good life? You would not give a lecture. You would not quote a book. You would simply smile and live the answer. You are no longer chasing light. You have become it. And even when the light fades, the warmth remains. That is your legacy. Not a monument, but a presence. Not applause, but a life that quietly helped others love theirs more deeply. That is the Stoics' final victory. Not to conquer death, but to have no fear in meeting it. And so the journey ends, not in triumph, but in peace. You lived. You chose. You loved. You let go. And now, like a candle that has given all its light, you return to the dark, having made it warmer. If this helped you, consider subscribing and following for more.